Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for my concluding thoughts on, let's leave enough space, The Hunt for Red October in its classic TSR sized box. So thank you if you've been following my introduction and the two example of play videos that I've very much enjoyed doing for this game. As I do with so many of the games I showcase on this channel, I'm just going to come straight out and say I really like this one. For me, it sits somewhere between this sort of really challenging but quite light and fun family games that TSR was so good at producing back in the day. I mean, it says on the box, for ages 12 and up. And they're not kidding. It actually is a game that you could get a 12-year-old to grasp after a fairly short interval, I would say. And the important thing there is the difference between the basic game rules and the additional rules. Now, everything you need to play a very satisfying game is right there in the basics. And the additional rules, things like, how you handle some of your AA ships, like the Ticonderogas, in order to get more out of them, tankers for refueling aircraft, all these little chromy things. What they do, to my mind, is they make it a more realistic simulation. But even if you just play with the basic rules, there's already a good bit of realism built in. And the real magic there is those wonderfully simplistic but yet very effective ratings that all the ships and subs and aircraft have been assigned. I really like the elegance of the interplay between, just having a detection rating and then having combat ratings with only two color coding for special ability. It makes it really easy to remember, unless you're me and have to keep running back to the rule book every 5 minutes. But it's memorable and it models things very effectively. The dice can be a little bit swingy, but not so much, because I think the ratings are very well thought out and they control the luck of the dice to a degree. So you know that if you send a Los Angeles class submarine into the middle of a pack of November class submarines, odds are, even if every single Soviet submarine plays a detection counter, the NATO sub is probably going to do a bit better in terms of detecting the enemy. And in the basic game, if you're not using the counter-attack rule, the final counter-attack rule, good chance that your outnumbered Los Angeles will be able to snipe one of them and then make good its getaway. Now, of course, the optional rule of having the final counter-attack does make it a bit of a risky proposition for NATO, which is why I like that rule so much. But anyway, I am drifting into specifics. Now, much as I enjoyed doing that demo video for you guys, I feel I didn't really get a chance to demo the bit of the game that's really strongest for me, and that is the hidden movement and hidden unit aspect. As you can see from the picture on the board, at the back of the box, the real meat of this game is this wonderful bluffing system, where for most of the game your units are turned towards you and completely hidden from your opponent. And if you move units into the same sea area, you can mix them up. You can just try and confuse your opponent as to what you're about. And the fact that there's only two sizes for surface vessels and submarines means that the possibility of confusion is very high. Now, I appreciate that submarines will have a little icon on the reverse of their counter so that and also so that they know you're not cheating when you trigger the interception rule. But there's still so much scope for bluff. I sometimes think of it as a very refined, a much better version of Stratego but exciting, he says, insulting a popular and much loved family board game. And I'm sorry I wasn't quite able to get that across in the video. It's a very hard thing to do when you're solitairing and you have to forget, what you know, which was a pity, because the shooting and the exchange of fire is as much fun as these things always are. But to me, it is the hidden movement, the planning, trying to guess what your opponent is going to do, because you know roughly what his objectives are when the scenario starts. But those that are not very time sensitive, you sometimes think, oh, what exactly has he got in there? There's only one way to find out: commit units. The best experiences I have had playing this game against a live player is those moments where you triumphantly point at a piece and say, I am going to detect that, rubbing your hands with glee and expecting that you've just nailed his Los Angeles when you roll a 1. And then he turns it round to reveal a sturgeon. You go, no, I just grouped my Akula on that thing. And yeah, the game is full of moments like that, and it's wonderful. The same is true of the aircraft, of course. The aircraft counters are double-sided, so the only clue your enemy player gets is being able to see whether they're short, medium, or long-range aircraft, and they can draw whatever conclusions they want from that. Sometimes they'll be useful, sometimes they'll be less so. Thinking of the components, now sometimes components from this era can get a bit of a bad press, but I don't think that's very fair as they relate to this game. I mean, the standees are fairly solid. One of mine is beginning to give, but then it has been in service since the 1980s. I can think of a lot of things that have been in service since the 1980s that are starting to give. So they're doing very well. I do actually quite like the cardboard fold-over ships and submarines. I think they work very well for what they are. I mean, yes, they probably could have printed them on thick cardboard, but to me, it doesn't make that much of a difference. And if it shaved a bit of the price off the game at the time, then it was probably a good move. Some people I know have expressed a preference for proper counters, if you will, that lie flat on the map and are revealed. That, not everyone is a fan of standees, and that's fair enough. I did hear of one player who actually glued his ship stands, his fold over ship cards together, so he effectively turned them into counters. So you can do that if you like. It still plays the same, it still carries the same level of excitement. The map, of course, I cannot fault the map. As some of you have already said in the comments, it's a beautiful, beautiful map. Absolutely gorgeous work of art. It's easy to read. There's nothing confusing. It's well explained in the rule book. I like the aesthetics of the game overall. I mean, this, as I say, was probably really colourful for the 1980s, but at the same time, I like the somber tone, because this is, after all, the Cold War going hot, and this is a sort of, NATO or Soviet war room experience. It's not going to be garish with lots of primary colours, except for red, maybe. And the rule book too. I like the way the rule book is done. I like those little sidebars with the information about different units. It makes it look almost like a sort of stylized intel or briefing document. Those little profiles help as well. While I'm on the subject of the rule book, I've got to say that there were elements of the rule book where I wonder if they proofread it as closely as they could. There are odd moments here and there where you have to look at it 2 or 3 times and go, do they actually mean that? And I'll give you 2 examples there. One, and this is fairly critical, when you're creating a task force, the only stipulations as to how you place ships are that at least half of your task force's vessels must be in the anti-submarine warfare screen. And in the anti-aircraft screen or air defense screen, the rules as they're worded say you must have more ships in the AA screen than you have in the center. But that doesn't always work with the vessels that you're given at the start of some of the scenarios. And interestingly enough, the example of play on the very next page shows a NATO task force which has 4 ships in the ASW screen, so half the force, 2 ships in the center, and 2 ships in the AA screen, so that's equal. So the way I play it, going because it seems to make sense in terms of that demonstration and the scenarios, the way I play it is that your AA screen has to equal or exceed what's in the center. I think you can just about get away with that. One of the other notable ones is in scenario 2, which is the really fun Hunt for Red October scenario, where there's two contradictory statements. In one paragraph under the special rules, it says the Red October can move one space every turn. And the very next paragraph, it says any damage the Red October takes reduces its speed to 1. Okay. The solution to this conundrum is actually provided by the victory conditions, because Red October has only 10 turns to reach one of the 2 US ports on the map. And believe me, because I've tried it, if you move that submarine at a speed of 1, you are not going to make the United States in 10 turns. It is impossible. It cannot be done. So on the other hand, if you move the Red October 3, it makes life devilishly difficult for the Soviet Navy. So I tend to read it that the Red October is moving at a speed of 2, which makes sense. She's going cautiously, she's trying not to be found because there's an awful lot of ships out there. So those are just some small examples of where the rule book has not, well, back in the day was not checked as thoroughly as it perhaps could have been. However, none of these problems are game breakers. They're all really minor. And it's the sort of problem that you can figure out after only a few minutes head scratching. And to be perfectly honest, set against all the fun and amusement that this gives you, I think that is a really, really small price to pay for what is an excellent game. Now, I was really, really glad to see again in the comments, and I will answer these as soon as I can, guys. I was so pleased that these videos brought some of you down memory lane, because they certainly did for me. And it's just really nice to revisit these older games, I think, because they do have a lot of value. Newer games come out, newer games, bring new things to the party, and they have a lot of value. But I think there's a reason we love the golden oldies. And I must say, a very important aspect for me is narrative. And the Hunt for Red October tells some really quite amazing stories. You have games that, we all have them, don't we? The games that stay with you for years, and you talk about them to friends. Go, oh yeah, I couldn't believe I got away with that. That time I sneaked up on the USS Kennedy with a November and somehow managed to sink the thing, or at least send it into port. They'll know you're lying if you claim to sink it. But yeah, so that to me is the magic of a good game, even if it does have a couple of tiny wrinkles. And it's why the Hunt for Red October will never be leaving my collection, because I think it's such a fantastic game. If you want the atmosphere, I mean, have a night where you watch the movie and then play the game, or vice versa, just something to get you in a bit of a mood for it. So yeah, very little to criticize about the Hunt for Red October. As far as I'm concerned, the game has aged really, really well. And if it was ever reissued, and I mean this as a high compliment, I would change very little about this game. In fact, I wouldn't change anything about it. I would just tighten up those slight uncertainties in the rule book, because to be honest, that's all that you need to fix, really. It's a game that rewards repeated play. 8 scenarios, I think, is a good amount for a game like this. And there's enough variety in the scenarios to keep, making you want to keep coming back. Now, most of us probably own a fair few games, so it's unlikely you will play this one to death by, getting fed up of it. At least I don't think so. And again, I've mentioned it before, but just to finish off really, and just commend the game for this wonderful balance it strikes between being easy to learn and yet detailed enough, just detailed enough to please Cold War aficionados. I once described it, and I still stick to this description, as Harpoon for 12-year-olds. And I think that works for me. I mean, I played Harpoon once. It reminded me of Fear God and Dreadnought for its level of complexity. But when I stop and think about it, this game at a strategic level would give you, fairly similarly realistic results. If you send a Ticonderoga up against a bunch of aircraft, it will probably do very well. If you position an Aegis, again, a Ticonderoga well within your formation, it will knock down lots of planes. It rewards real life tactics. So it rewards real life tactics. It's a decently realistic game for what it is. And most importantly, it's good fun. It's a really wonderful social game. The only fault, and this is me rather than the game, is I've yet to work out a good way of soloing it, except just being as honest as I can. But that's a problem for me to try and fix. Of course, if any of you guys who are massive fans of this game too, if any of you have figured out a decent solo system, please tell me, because I would really love to know. But I'm going to wrap up there. Say a temporary goodbye to the Hunt for Red October, but only a temporary one, because I do intend to have it back on my table before too long. But to all of you, thank you so much for following this particular series. As always, I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have making it. As always, I do appreciate your company. Thank you for your patience when I'm struggling with items on a map and having to dash out and double check rules because my brain has gone halfway through. And thank you for all the comments and all the interaction. It really, really makes my day when those messages come in. Thank you so much. And as I say, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. To my long-suffering and hugely patient veterans, always grateful and always wonderful to see you guys. And to anyone who might be new to my channel, a very warm welcome to you. If you've somehow stumbled onto this as the first video, I do warmly invite you to go back and view the earlier videos for the Hunt for Red October. And if it's wargaming in general that's brought you here, please do have a bit of a meander. Hopefully you'll find other stuff on the channel that you like. But as always, guys, whoever you are and wherever you're watching from, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.